Hey, everybody. Welcome to Splintered Spirits, the podcast hosted by me, Gary, and with me, as always, is John.
Going on? Hi.
John, we got a good episode here today. Joining us
Excited.
is, it's going to
So
be really
excited.
great. It's a fun one. He's a pro. Joining us today is Dan Sturges. Dan is an award-winning actor turned respected paranormal investigator, a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Dan's face has popped up in countless commercials. As an actor, Dan has been seen in tons of them, from national, regional, cable. If you can drink it, eat it, or drive it, Dan tried to get you to buy it.
Nice.
And you even may have seen his face in a few classic Law and Order episodes as well. But his childhood fascination with ghosts and Civil War history eventually pulled him into the paranormal world. After joining a local team in New York, Dan dove in head first and never looked back. He went on to form Sturges Paranormal, a research group known for investigating some of New York City's most haunted historic sites, including the Ed Sullivan Theater, the restaurant, One If by Land, Two If by Sea, and of course, some of his life's work here at the Merchant's House Museum, where Dan and his team have been conducting an 18-year ongoing investigation. He's made appearances on Good Morning America, The Late Show with David Letterman, and of course, he's an on-camera panelist for Paranormal Caught on Camera, shooting now, where our own John Santa was once featured. He's got the ghost cred and the stories to back it up. We are about to welcome Mr. Dan Sturges. Dan, let me bring you on camera, and thank you so much for joining us.
Dan.
John, what's going on, fellas?
Dan, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here. You've got so much cred. We love it. We love
it. Thanks, man. Thanks. You guys talked me up well. I feel bad that I'm so drunk right now. Gatorade, Mom. It's Gatorade, Mom.
Sure. We don't know what's in it, though. Someone will test it later. Dan, we like to start
I'm
off.
getting jealous, Dan. I'm getting jealous.
I know. It's right. For you guys, it is happy hour. I mean,
Yeah.
Be...
Well, yeah. And you're not far from me, John. You're right up the road from me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Well, we'll get into this because I think you guys share a lot more in common than you may even realize. So, Dan, I like to start everything off with this question with all of our guests, because what Splintered Spirits is about is not just about spirit communication, but it's really testing. We're sort of really curious about what John's theory of spirits are. He has a very specific theory. Mm-hmm. He thinks spirits are the fractured memories of the living, that our energy, when it dissipates from us, those memories are attached to it and travel however they travel to where they need to go. What's important. So I like to ask our guests, Dan, what do you think spirits are?
Well, guys, I basically agree with John there. When I talk to people and they ask me, Dan, what's a ghost? They ask me the same question. I tell them it's consciousness that has survived bodily death. And meaning that, this shell, this body that we're renting for a little while, when that stops working, whether it be naturally or tragically, where does our consciousness go? Does it just fragment? I think it stays intact. I think consciousness bounces around. I believe in reincarnation. I don't know if you guys have done any research into that, but that's a fascinating subject.
I don't think we've even touched that one yet.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Dovetails with the paranormal in a really, really unique way. So I believe that consciousness survives bodily death. And what, as a paranormal investigator, what I'm trying to do is, are we able to communicate with that consciousness? Can that consciousness communicate with us? Is it aware that, okay, I don't have my physical body anymore, but I'm going to go talk to John. I'm going to go talk to Gary. I'm going to try and communicate with these guys. And if they're able to, are they able to interact with the physical world? Are they able to, touch things? I've been touched on in an investigation. How did that happen? So it's similar to John's take on it. I just think consciousness stays intact. And that's what I believe, and I'm sticking to it.
So then it's fine. It's great. Now, our first guest was someone you know very well, Lloyd Auerbach.
Oh my God, Lloyd
Himself.
cool.
So, do you look at, how do you distinguish between? I assume how he defines a haunting versus an apparition, and a haunting is an imprint. How do
Right.
you distinguish between what is a haunting versus what is an apparition, in terms of, are you really communicating, or are you just catching echoes of
Right.
spirits?
Oh, great question. Lloyd's my mentor, and when I was starting out and learning about all this stuff, I read all of Lloyd's books, and I was lucky enough. I went to go see Lloyd in a lecture here in the city, and we struck up a friendship. So a lot of my things line up with what Lloyd says. But an apparition, for me, in parapsychology, and I'm not a parapsychologist, but I know a lot of people claim that they are, but they're not. Lloyd is. But I think, an apparitional type of haunting, it's what the cool kids on TV call an intelligent type of haunting. And, residual haunting, you hear people talk about residual hauntings. Parapsychology is called a place memory haunting. And then poltergeist effects and stuff like that's a whole different type of haunting. So I go down the line. I try and use the verbiage of parapsychologists and the people whose books I read, because that's what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So an apparitional haunting kind of is equal to an intelligent haunting, what people call it.
And how do you distinguish? Like, how do you know when you're out there? Like, okay, this is a conscious thing, or what do you find? How do you
Sure. Well, if I'm doing an EVP session and I'm starting to get answers. I've gotten direct answers to questions on an EVP. Do you play the piano? And we'll get, I strike the keys in succession. Somebody will look in a mirror and say, do I look pretty? And then when we play back the EVP, we have pleasant enough. So these are direct answers to questions that we're throwing out there. So for me, that, absolutely rings as an apparitional or intelligent type of haunting. Or any, can you open the door? Can you give me a knock? If you're getting an answer, an intelligent answer, can you knock 3 times? Can you knock 3 times again? Can you knock once? And that happens, that is somebody that's consciousness interacting with you somehow. And they're aware that they're doing it, and they're aware of you.
That's where I would run. Knock 3 times in here. It's like Gary runs 1 time. So where do you stand on this? Because, the idea of, do you think spirits are stuck, or they want help, or do they want recognition, or what do you think is going on?
Right. Well, again, when we're dealing with spirits, we have to remember we're dealing with people that just don't have a body. So we're dealing with people. I don't believe spirits get stuck. If you're just consciousness, how do you get stuck? You have your own free will as a human being. And if you want to, go to visit your family, all you have to do is think of it, and you're going to be there. And so I don't believe spirits get stuck. It's really putting the cart in front of the horse. We haven't been able to prove that spirits exist, and so how can we put limitations on them? I don't think, I think it's short-sighted to be putting limitations on a spirit. I mean, that's crazy.
How many times, John, do you get on your feeds in your lives people saying they have unfinished business?
So and I'm starting, listening to Dan. Me and Dan had very similar views, it seems, on all of this. But it seems like it's logical. That's the we're thinking in places of logic when it comes to spirits. But yes, I get that constantly. Spirits are stuck. Spirits need unfinished business. And I try to tell people that, listen, these are people. We're dealing with human beings without the meat sacks.
Right. And who's finished all their business? Who's finished all their business?
Everybody's
unfinished business.
That's funny, man.
My dad, I was with my dad. We were all around him when he passed. And, 2 hours before he passed away, he was telling me what to do. He was like, hey, go down here to my toolbox and get this and get that. He had unfinished business. He was still taking care of things. So,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So Dan, you've been doing this a long time and you've seen a
Yeah.
lot and you've seen a lot of change. Now, technology is a big part of what John does. And I think it's a big part of, as I'm getting into this world, understanding a lot of things. Now, John is a big proponent of the apps, right? He uses
Mhm.
them. And listen, we understand we are not delusional about the spirit apps and what
Right.
they do and how the pareidolia involved or
Mhm.
the messages. The thing that I, as a noob, find amazing when John uses it is one, I got the same apps on my phone and I don't get what he gets.
Right.
Sure, I get some of the same. There's some certain ones have certain built-in phrasings, get out of here, run,
Yeah.
all these stuff. But when John when John uses it, they get specific. He gets real Q&A. They get names. They say things that gets him kicked off TikTok for bullying because one of them's mean to him, and it's like, and people get offended.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and it's it is too. It happens too often to be explainable, in my opinion, right? And
Yeah.
it just happens too often. So you've seen the sort of evolution of tech in your field
Right.
as an investigator. What are how has it changed the way you investigate, if at all?
Um, Again, thank you for a great question. As far as the tech, when I first started out, I can always tell somebody who's just starting out. When I first started out, I used to have to rent a van to bring all my stuff on an investigation. I had miles of cable. I had monitors, DVRs. I had all the crap that you see on the Go shows, especially when the Go shows came out. I was like, I got to get some of that. I got to get me a FLIR camera. I didn't know any of this. Can I curse?
Yeah, sure.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
go
didn't know
for
how
it.
any of this shit worked,
Right.
but I was throwing it out there because I saw Jason and Grant doing it on the Ghost Hunter show.
The original Ghost Hunters, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now, all these years later, my pack has like dirty gym clothes and an EMF meter and a recorder, and that's it. I think your best piece of equipment is a level head, and just understand that you may bump into things that you can't explain, and it doesn't mean that they're paranormal. It just means you haven't been able to explain it. Remember, thunder and lightning were paranormal a lot longer than they've been normal.
Yeah.
For so maybe this stuff will just figure it out. But we have to remember Harry Price.
I don't
Have
know
you
who
ever
that is.
read
I don't know
any
who that is.
Harry Price is an amazing guy. He investigated the Borley Rectory, which is over in the UK. And he did this back in the early 1900s. He rented this rectory for a year, and he had a pencil and a notebook, and he investigated the crap out of that place and had amazing results. So you don't need a lot of the gadgets and the techie stuff. Um, it's good to use as backup, but I wouldn't rely on that entirely because, as far as the apps go, I was just 2 weekends ago, I was in Ohio with a bunch of the guys, and they had these apps, and I was like, did you just figure out, you know, the lifelong question of humanity? Did you just figure that out with like a $1.99 app you got off the store? Because that's pretty freaking amazing. You can that stuff can help. It can back you up, but I wouldn't. A phrase coming out of an app on your phone is not something that would keep me going back to a place. If I got EVP, if I got EMF spikes, if I got all kinds of other stuff, I always work with a psychic medium, always. And if I have this person and they're backing up what the app says, all right, then I'll think of that. But the app alone does not a haunting make.
Is there a piece of tech though that now you bring that you do sort of trust and you like and you
I have a few tri-field EMF meters, natural tri-field EMF meters. And what they do is they filter out man-made EVP. Sometimes when you see these people walking around the shows and they have that little black EMF meter and they're going, oh, 2 milligauss, that's picking up man-made electricity. It's not what human beings give off. So why would you use that? You can use that to get a baseline. People who are hypersensitive to electromagnetic fields. Michael Persinger up in Toronto, I think he's passed since then, but he did a lot of experiments on how EMF affects people. And he is able to recreate religious experiences, UFO abductions, ghosts, just by manipulating where the EMF is affecting this person on the side of the brain. He had like a God helmet, it was called, and he would put it on, put somebody in an isolated room, everything's all controlled, and suddenly they're floating out their window going up to a spaceship. So, and they're not, but they're able to, they're able to trigger a response from somebody's brain, and then that just tells the story for this person.
Based on electromagnetic fields.
Electromagnetic fields. I've been on plenty of investigations where, the people say, oh, I'm laying in bed and I hear all these weird things. And you look on the corner of their bed back in the day, I'm giving my age away, there's an alarm clock, that you plug in. Alarm clocks give off a ton of EMF, and EMF dissipates very quickly. So I tell the people, I say, you want your haunting to go away? Move your alarm clock, put it on the other side. And it goes away, it stops.
So it's like so a person could be more sensitive to that then triggers false positives, if you will.
False positive, exactly. And especially if you're on a paranormal investigation and you have somebody, this happened to me, who happened to be, and you don't know if you're hypersensitive. John, if you're hypersensitive to EMF?
I am.
Possibly. Are you?
No, I do. No, I know for a fact.
Yeah.
So let me break this down. It's funny that you're saying this.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of like service work. I went up to a place up in Armonk called Wright's Mill. It's a very developed community, right? Lots of money. They were constantly building homes and whatnot. There was 2 houses in particular that constantly birds were flying into windows.
Yeah.
People would get headaches if they were there. I would step on the property. They thought the property was haunted. Right. I'd step on the property and my stomach would start to turn. I'd start to, when you're gonna puke, and right. I wouldn't be able to service the property at all. Wow. So yeah, that's how I know that I am sensitive to, such things.
Right.
And I actually don't use a lot of the gadgets and whatnot that a lot of investigators use for those reasons.
Right. I've always, and part of it, speaking to what you're talking about, Dan, I think some of the reactions he gets is, we haven't tested him and put him in any sort of God helmet or, checked his, wired him up or anything. But I feel like he might be giving off something that gets the responses he gets from spirit, whether, from spirits, or however it works via the app. We joke around, we call him a tech medium. Like he's like, he hates it, but it's like, I mean, I don't know how else to explain it.
I don't know. You look a little extra large to me, John. I don't mean that in a bad way.
That's what I'm saying. I'm a triple X, Dan. I'm a triple X.
Yeah, right on, man. Right on.
Are you concerned, Dan, or anything about where tech is going in what you do? With AI coming out, or like the apps that John uses. Do you think that'll hinder or help in what you do? Because you're still active. You're still actively investigating.
Yeah, it depends on the person using it. And, if the person using it is going, okay, well, I've got this coming off, excuse me. I've got this coming off the app. What else is happening? What else is happening? I don't think you can just go into and do an investigation with an app on your phone. You can, but if you really want to do something scientifically, or as close to scientifically as you can, because we're not scientists. We're all using scientific equipment that we really don't know how to use.
We use ovens, doesn't mean we're cooks, right? Doesn't mean we're chefs.
Exactly. And
that's right.
That's so easy.
Yeah.
As far as like equipment, and am I excited about this stuff? And yeah, the stuff that's coming out is really cool, and it's people are thinking about how to do this. What's the best way to do this? And maybe they come up with an idea for an app. Maybe they figure out how to modify a piece of equipment. When I do investigations and I'm recording EVP, I never hold the recorder. If I'm holding the recorder, nothing ever comes on that recorder. I let other people hold it. But I always take a recorder and I disengage the microphone, right? Because, like what we were talking about earlier, you shouldn't need a microphone to pick up EVP, because a spirit doesn't have the body, doesn't have the tools. Now, how do our ears work? Somebody says something, I'm talking, I'm creating sound waves, and it's going into the microphone. It's coming out your end. It's tickling the little cochlea that are in your ear. It sends a signal to your brain. Your brain goes, "Oh, this guy's talking." If a spirit doesn't have a voice box or a tongue to manipulate sound waves, what's going in the recorder? Your questions. So I like to use one or two recorders that have the microphone disengaged, and everything is correctly time stamped. So you use the other recorders to hear your questions, not to hear the answers. And then I listen to the recorder with a disabled microphone. I haven't gotten full sentences. I've gotten noises. I've gotten murmurs. I haven't gotten an answer to a question that I've asked, but I feel like I've gotten close. And maybe I just got a crappy recorder, and that's the reason why. But you shouldn't need the microphone engaged.
Yeah, what's the wildest thing that you've some of this tech or things that you've used has you picked up on? Like, what was a wow? What's a wow moment for you in some of your investigations? With this
You
stuff.
using the tech?
Yeah, or like where even if something happened with that tech that you weren't expecting, or you just what I mean, where it was like,
I got a good one. I was in upstate New York at a old funeral parlor that a guy turned into a house. It was beautiful, right on the Hudson River. And I was spending the night in the embalming room, as you do, and I had an old tape
as
recorder.
you guys do.
Yeah, right. And this embalming room was, it's like they shut the lights off 100 years ago, turn the lights back on, and that's what the embalming room looks like. So it's very echoey. It's all tiled. It's all stainless steel. And I had this old, tape recorder, and you have to push record and play in to record. One of those old ones.
Yeah.
And I'm Big Tough Dan. I was powerlifting at the time. I was freaking jacked up, and I said, I'm gonna go down to the embalming room. Now, meanwhile, I'm shitting my pants down in the embalming room. There's nobody around me, and I had a tape in. And I had the tape recorder was on the stainless steel gurney that would hold the body, that had all the drains and everything for the bodily fluids. It was so creepy. And it was a 90-minute tape, so 45 minutes each side. So 45 minutes, I'm 44 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm sitting down there, and then 30 seconds later, it pops. It ends the end of the tape. So the buttons pop out, and it hit the metal table, and it just echoed in the tile room. And I screamed and jumped out of my chair and landed in like the other room, thinking, "Oh my God, something just banged the table!" But it was my stupid tape recorder, So you got to beware of some of that stuff. But yeah, so
I would say that's not in the manual for how tape recorders are supposed to work, and therefore it worked differently than
I know
expected.
you can't take it back to Best Buy and go, "Yeah, I was hanging out in a embalming room, and somehow this was,
Ghost sort of broke it. It's not covered under the warranty."
I gotta agree. I gotta agree with Dan. There's especially going back to the apps. One big thing that I noticed because a lot of people use these apps now.
Yeah.
They'll sit in a room. They'll be wherever they are, and let's say they know that other people have investigated. Let's say hypothetically a spirit named Mary, right? Very common name. I get it all the time. They'll say the name over and over and over. Mary, can you hear me? Mary, how are you feeling? And then the app will kick out the name Mary,
Yeah.
And people will get so excited over it. And it's like, and I support the apps. I use a bunch of different ones, but there has to be some form of logic when using them where it's like somebody programmed that to happen.
Yeah.
It's constantly these things access your microphone, they
Yeah.
access your phones,
Yep.
and so those things have to be kept in mind. So going back to that, for example, like if I'm at a cemetery, I have these phones on my wrist. So I have one phone on my wrist facing usually out into the darkness.
Hmm.
And if I go up to a headstone and I say, Spirit, may we have a conversation? And I get a yes or a yes answer. This next question I always ask, it's repetitive. I know it bores people sometimes, but I always ask, what is your name?
Hmm.
And they will say, and I'll get the name sometimes. And
No, that's
usually,
awesome.
if I get that yes answer and I get that name, I get a conversation afterwards.
That's awesome. That's
Which is
awesome.
which is wild. But you're right. With anything, whether you're using the apps, whether you're using any sort of equipment, we have to have a logical mind. We have to be able to, you know, really not draw conclusions
Hmm.
without the proper evidence to back it up. And we have to be able to admit to ourselves sometimes evidence could be, what's the word,
Inconclusive.
Hmm.
inconclusive.
And just to
Yeah.
support what John's saying, because I've seen him do it. It's not like he asks what's its name, and it's not like another common name, John, and then he looks around and like, oh, there's a John. It's sometimes it's like
You talking about
a very
Chatsfield, like
yeah,
that one
like
with
a weird,
Chatsfield,
like a
first
name
Yeah.
that
and
would
last
not be
name.
programmed in, and
Yeah,
then
Right.
within the vicinity of the headstones, you find the headstone with that name, and
yeah.
it's really quite odd and
It's wild.
terrifying. It's
It's
wild.
still, Dan. It still blows my mind, and I've been doing it for years now. It still blows my
I'm
mind.
coming up there and hanging with you in a cemetery, John, man.
Oh,
It's
Dan,
not far
I
away.
would
You will
love
love
it.
it. You will love it.
I would
And
love it.
and here's the thing. This is another great thing about the two of you that you both love, because Dan, you have a love for history and a
Mhm.
love
So do I.
for historic locations. And look, both being in New York, John goes to a couple of these places. So, um, let's just sort of the gossip stuff out of there. You've explored a ton of famous haunts. Are there any locations you think are overrated and others that deserve more attention?
Um, Overrated. I think every place has a value to it. Whether or not it ends up being haunted or you just have an old building. Um, yeah, overrated. Now I'm going to say no. None of the
Okay.
places I've been to.
Well,
I'm
what
sure
makes you
there
think?
are. You go to Eastern State Penitentiary, which I've had a lot of luck, and they don't do the ghost stuff anymore. But if you're no, I'm going to say no, no, no.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
then
think
what
places
for
are overrated.
the places that for these historic locations? Why do you think that they retain such spiritual energy?
Well,
Is it trauma? Just age? What's the intent?
we're giving off energy right now. And who knows where this energy is going. Lloyd Auerbach tells a great story. When
I hope
people
it's going
think
to the
of,
bank one day. To be honest with you, I can use a little bank energy. You know what I'm saying?
tell me about it. Tell me
It's like,
about it.
but anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt
Um,
you.
Lloyd tells a story of a place memory haunting that he was involved with, where people were hearing other people having sex.
Oh yeah, we
Oh
did
And
yeah,
that.
oh
We
yeah, we
covered
know
we
that.
the
We
talked
story.
about
covered
Yeah.
that.
that.
Yeah, we did. He
Right,
told
Oh
right.
us that in the
yeah.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite Lloyd stories.
it's a great one.
But that those people weren't dead. They just moved to another house.
Right.
So it's oh man, we went off on a tangent. What was the
No, no.
freaking
Well, then tell me this.
No, this is
Let's
great.
jump to
Yeah, this is
let's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
yeah. But let's jump to, because look, let's talk about the Merchant House. This is a good point to bring it up. That's one of
All right.
your. It's one of your. Obviously 18 years, 19 years now.
It'll be
19 years studying
19
this
next week.
place. Why are you so fascinated with it, and why do you think that place has such spiritual energy? Let's talk
Uh,
specifically about this place.
yeah, I believe that the Merchant's House is as active as it is because of the people that run the Merchant's House. The merchant's house was, owned only by one family, lived in by only one family, and and again, I don't want to get. You can look up the merchant's house online and find all the dates, but when they closed the doors for the merchant's house, it sat empty for or unlived in um, for a couple of years, and then it opened back up as a museum of 19th century living, which would be like us making a museum of the 1990s. It's 30 years ago, and um, the people that take care of the house, the staff that runs it, love the house. They love the house. They respect the house. When they come in, they go, "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Treadwell." When they leave, they say, "Have a good night, Treadwells." You don't swear in it. I don't curse at the merchant's house. I curse all the time. And but I respect the merchant's house, and I choose not to. And I think the spirits appreciate the respect that their house receives. Now, I've brought in some really amazing mediums, psychic mediums, and they have all, to a person, have said it's mostly the servants that are haunting the house, if you want to call haunting. When you say haunting, it sounds scary and evil, but they pop in from time to time. The Treadwells, the family that own the house, pop in from time to time. They love the way when it's decorated around Christmas time. You go in there with an EVP, to collect some EVP, you get them all night long because they're enjoying being there, and it's a happy place. Merchant's house isn't a scary place. So I love going there because I have these strange sort of connections, with the merchant's house. It took me about 6 months to get my first investigation in. They were on the original season of Ghost Hunters, and after that show aired, they got thousands and thousands of letters, and they had a bad experience. And they were like, you know what? Screw it. We're not letting any of these dopey ghost people come in here anymore. And the everything in the house, the merchant's house, is an original to the house. If you're looking at a chair at the merchant's house tomorrow, that chair was sitting there in the 1840s. People were using that. The sheets on the bed are the sheets that they slept in. The plates and the cups in the kitchen are the plates and the cups that they ate off of. It's all original. It's all original. Everything is where it was. So it's priceless. This place, priceless. And Mr. Treadwell, Seabury Treadwell, he here's a little connection which gave me goosebumps when I found out. He was passed away on March 7th, 1865, right? So I was born, I'm going to give my age away, on March 7th, 1965, 100 years to the day. I don't believe in coincidence. There's a reason I'm at the merchant's house. First time I walked in there after 6 months of buying everybody freaking lunches and donations and all kinds of crazy shit. First time I walked in, I was waiting for a member of the board to come from the offices upstairs, and I'm sitting in the middle of the parlor, and I started to cry. And I'm not a crier, I cry when I watch commercials sitting in my apartment by myself. But when I'm out being tough, big guy Dan, I don't do that. And I was bawling. The guy came down, and I'm standing in the parlor, just a mess. And he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I don't know. It just never happens to me. This never happens to me." I connected to it. I connected.
Wait, you brought up one of the first things you brought up today was reincarnation. Do you feel there's some connection there with you in this place?
No. Okay. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I had never heard of the merchant's house till, maybe 20, 21 years ago. I've never had any kind of past life memories or anything like that. I just dig the house. I think the house digs me. The spirits are aware of me. They know my name. I have never caught my name on a recorder on an EVP, but the psychic mediums I bring in there go, "Oh yeah, Dan, they're comfortable with you. It's cool."
Now, have you decided that these are apparitions as opposed to like a haunting, an imprint, as Lloyd would put it, or what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. We recorded footsteps one time. I was standing with a colleague whose name was Dan as well, not to make it all confusing. But these footsteps walked right between us, standing on the second floor of a house. right between us. And I looked at him, he looked at me. I'm like, you heard that, right? And I don't think, the wood was squeaking. I think we were meant to hear that. All right. And it was, I'm gonna go weird now. It was imprinted for us to experience that. All right. I don't think they were footsteps. Again, ghosts don't have a body. How do they make, you know, footprint sounds? And is that even a word? Footprint sounds.
I get it, but
Yes.
we all understand
How
how
do
to
they
be
create
freaked
that
out by it.
noise? Yeah. How do they create that noise if they don't have a body? So they have to imprint it onto you what they want you to hear. This is what Lloyd will tell you too, is a spirit or an apparition when it's interacting with you can appear to you whatever way it wants to show you. So did Lloyd talk about a case of an old woman and a young boy in San Francisco?
No.
And oh man, that's my favorite Lloyd story. But he was interviewing a young boy who was having apparitional experiences with an older woman, but this woman would show up to him at his age, as a teenager, as an adult, as an old lady. It was just whatever she felt like projecting to him. That's what she projected to him. So again, went off on a crazy tangent, but
No, it's great. No, it's great.
yeah. It's as far as the intelligent stuff, when you're getting interactions like that, when Lloyd is sitting across from a boy who's sitting next to an empty chair, and he asks the empty chair a question, little boy looks at the chair and then answers Lloyd, and he got a phone number. He got a phone number where this old lady who has passed away, she's in spirit, and she's communicating with this boy whose family moved into the house that she once lived in. um, he rattled off a phone number. They dialed it. It was an assisted living home where this woman's brother lived.
Dude.
Wow.
How does that
Dude.
Wow.
Well, that little boy's a witch.
a
And,
medium? And it
and
continued to see that woman when he grew up. His children saw that woman. So
what?
And Dan, you said that the child was seeing this woman in different stages of her life. Like she
correct.
would appear as like middle aged,
Right.
and then next time older. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
That's
She
wild.
she
Wow.
she appeared to him first as an old woman, and when Lloyd asked, "Why do you only communicate with him and nobody else?" she said her answer was, "He's the only one that waved back." And then this little boy's parents were like, "I remember seeing an old lady wave to us, and I just thought it was a lady like out on the lawn or walking around." But the little boy was the first person to wave back and say hello.
John knows my theory on this too. If the movies are to believe, those old woman ghosts are the scariest there are.
I think any little kid spirit
Little
is
kid ghosts,
creepy,
dude.
Yeah,
Like
man.
the
Yeah.
movies
freaky,
say,
right? Oh,
Yeah.
it's
listen,
not.
I gotta just recap on something that Dan said, which is so important. And I try to stress this when I'm doing my documentation to so many people, because I do this on social media. I
Okay.
get an array of questions. I will go to a place like the Algonquin Hotel,
Hmm.
okay, or the Southern Mansion in Cape May. All right,
Hmm.
two very beautiful places
Yeah.
that do not have a bad vibe or a bad bone in their bodies. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like
Sure.
they're just pleasant places to be,
Yeah.
and we experience a lot. We experience. Oh, that was the cat. All right, I heard something back there. It was the cat. I experience all these incredible, things happening. And I try to stress to people, hey, listen, these places can be haunted, and it doesn't have to be evil. It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have
Right.
to be malicious, and it doesn't have to be angry. Sometimes it could be pleasant and happy, and above
Yeah.
all, normal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And
normal, just
people are afraid of what they don't understand.
yeah.
And if you walk into a place and a door shuts, how do you know that that's not a spirit or somebody that's in spirit trying to get your attention because they want to talk to you?
Yeah.
But if you don't understand, that when you pass over into spirit doesn't make you know all the answers to the universe.
We
It doesn't
tried
make
that,
you.
Dan. We
Yeah.
tried to ask them for the March Madness NCAA picks, and they did me dirty on it. I did my bracket this year, and I absolutely got hammered. They picked all the wrong teams. It was a terrible choice. So yes,
I've never done brackets.
I love the bracket. It's my favorite thing. But it was anyway. Yes, we
Yeah,
agree. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
People are afraid of what they don't understand. So if they walk into, say, the merchant's house, and they hear footsteps running down the stairs, I've had people just turn around and walk right out. Walk in and walk right out. I'm going, but it's not that place. You have to try and understand that, we're dealing with some nice people, and, they're people, maybe they're having a bad day. People talk about evil spirits, and, if a guy's a jackass when he's alive and he passes away and somehow he comes back, odds are he's going to be a jackass. He's not going to be.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, maybe these evil entities, these demons, which I don't buy into, maybe these people were just dicks before they died,
Yeah, Dan, look, Dan, you are speaking my language.
Right on, man.
You are speaking my language. I can, again, dealing with the social media aspect of it, a bunch of people in the chat, people are always screaming demons. People are always screaming all this wild stuff. And it's like, I like to call it paranature almost.
Yeah.
Like it's a form of nature we yet understand.
Yeah, paranormal is a terrible word.
I
mean,
agree.
it's beyond normal. Which
Yeah.
is what it translates to. But when people say something about paranormal, it immediately conjures up. Got to get the conjuring word in there.
Sure.
Immediately, brings up evil. Paranormal activity, all these scary movies.
Yeah.
When it's just something we haven't figured out yet.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be scary. I've gone on investigation on 29th Street in an old warehouse, and I got creeped out, man. We had set cameras up to let run for like an hour and a half. We were going to go get something to eat, and I forgot my phone. Right? I hate phones. I hate these friggin' phones. You're tied to them. And so I was like, now I got to go up and go get my damn phone. And I was walking across. It was the whole floor of a building on 29th Street. And I was walking to where our stuff was to go get my phone, and I just got creeped out. I was like, man, something bad is going to happen right now. And part of me was like, time to go. But part of me is like, you know what? You got to stay. You got to stay to see if something happens. And I was shaking. I was so sure something was going to happen, and nothing did. I texted the guys. I said, man, something's brewing up here. I'll see you guys in like 15 minutes, half an hour. Nothing happened. But I got really, really spooked. And it's difficult to, as an investigator, to kind of to not be influenced by a feeling, a creepy feeling. Who knows what happened? Maybe it was a little EMF was bugging me out. I don't know. But you have to put all that stuff out and say, I'm just here to collect data. I got this creepy feeling. What time was it? What was the temperature? What was the barometric pressure? All that stuff. And you got to data log all that stuff to see if there's any kind of patterns or correlations with the gigabytes of information that I have on my computers here.
So Dan,
go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Because when I document, I don't even consider myself an investigator at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more on the documentation side of things.
Right.
When I choose places to document,
Mm-hmm.
I go for history, and it doesn't even have to be popular history. Like where I'm at right now was a factory that started in 1865.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing crazy will happen. I've spoken to spirits here. One spirit in particular named Peter, and very prevalent, always talking about money, always talking about working. And when I asked management about it, I said, hey, do you guys know any Peter that worked here? They turned pale. They turned pale. They said, we had a bad experience with a Peter here that was a maintenance guy that worked here all his life. And he felt like he was being robbed, and he tried to break into our office, and then he fell to his death.
Wow.
And I mean, I wish I had the reaction. They turned pale when I said that name.
Kathy felt that. We brought Kathy Nadal in.
Yeah.
Oh, Kathy, she's amazing. Yeah.
And she was like brought up. She's like, I'm seeing splat. I'm seeing this. and it was about, like the guy who fell from the wind. I'm getting chills thinking about it, to be honest, because that's
Yeah,
weird.
Yeah.
That was
It's about Peter.
really
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So would you say that history plays a big role, and even like micro history, like a place that had just a lot of people or a lot of emotion, or just a lot of living in it, if you will, whether it
Mhm.
was work or home.
Sure. Would that give more of an opportunity for some kind of haunting, either an apparitional or like a place memory type of haunting?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. The more you go fishing in a pond that was just created and there's no fish, you're not going to catch anything.
You're not
But
gonna
you go
catch it.
fishing, you go fishing out in the Long Island Sound, odds are you're going to catch something. Not every time,
Yeah.
but
And you might not
you're
want to
going
eat
to
it
catch something.
either.
So what's that?
Said you might not want to eat it either.
Yeah, oh, the Long Island
Well,
Sound. Yeah. Hey, my dad was a fisherman, and when that's all we ate was out of the Sound,
Oh,
which
oh, nice.
might explain a lot.
that's why he can hear
Yeah,
ghosts now.
yeah,
It's
Yeah, yeah.
Dan, one thing you do that I definitely want to bring up, and John, I think this is a good person for advice. You visit a lot of theaters, Dan,
Yeah.
from the Ed Sullivan
Oh, nice.
Theater to the Belasco Theater.
Right.
What? Let me see. So, what is it about? What is it about a stage or a movie house? Why do you think that has, that kind of energy? What attracts you to the theater for this?
Okay. Well, when I moved to the city, like you said in that really cool intro, thank you. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I made my way as an actor in New York City for a long, long time, and doing those silly commercials, which afforded me to be able to do lots of theater where you don't get paid, and like experimental theater, new theater. Um, Actors are I hate actors. Um, they're narcissists and whatever. Let's not talk about it. It's a different podcast. But I think there's a lot in a theater. There's a lot of emotional energy. A lot of emotional energy. There's a lot of superstition in theater too. You don't say Macbeth in a theater. Ghost lights. You leave a ghost light on. It's
Ghost
called
light
a
on.
ghost
Yep.
light. It's
Yep.
not to keep ghosts away. It's to keep the guy cleaning the theater from falling off the stage. That's what it's for. And but people, it becomes a ghost light. So you said the Belasco Theater, which was haunted by David Belasco. It's a rite of passage for when there's a play in the house, for the actors to sneak into his David Belasco's apartment. He had a duplex apartment above the theater. I got to spend the night in there. It's really, really creepy and really, really cool. And he was out of his mind. But it's a rite of passage for these actors to sneak into his apartment after the show and see how long they can spend up there. So there's a lot of folklore. Oh, you're going to get scared by David Belasco. You might bump into David. You might, but you might just hear a rat knock something off a wall. Suddenly, that's paranormal, and it freaks everybody out. But old buildings, the old architecture. There's lots of history to theaters, especially the big giant Broadway theaters in New York City. I don't know when the Belasco Theater was built, but it was in the early 1900s. It's the first theater in the world that had an elevator, and they had that so Houdini could disappear an elephant below the stage. And there was an elevator that would bring the young ingenues from backstage all the way up to David Belasco's apartment, where he had a grotto and a confessional. He used to dress, they called him the Bishop of Broadway, and he would dress as a priest. And he would bring these girls into their confessional, hear all their sins, say, okay, you're all clean now, then take them out, and then give them a whole bunch more new sins to confess next time they come up. He was a wild man.
He was great. Sounds pretty gross. The first,
Yeah,
the original
was,
Harvey Weinstein.
That's exactly what he was doing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense. So, what? So we have in our hometown, in Westchester, the Capitol Theater,
right?
And John has now been given access to go in there.
Awesome.
What's some advice you have? Like, what's your approach? What's the first thing you do when you approach a theater to investigate or to walk around?
I try and get as much history. I try and get somebody that's had an experience there, an incredible experience. You're going to bump into, because actors are actors. Everyone's going to have an experience, but you find like a stagehand or a stage manager who says, yeah, this happened to me. It's legit. There's weird stuff going on here. I would have that person on the investigation. I don't understand why, when you go on an investigation, John, let's say, you're having experiences in your home and you call me in. I'm not going to tell you to leave. You're the one having experiences. They're
I tell
attracted
them
to
to
you
leave.
somehow. Gary gets the hell out of
I'll
there.
tell you to leave. I'll put that thing on the market.
Exactly.
Well, the Capitol is known for is a rock and roll theater, right? Like
Sure.
this is like some of the
I've seen shows up there. I've gone up there.
for
I think I saw Black Rose up there.
Yeah. From Janis Joplin to it's a famous rock club.
Yeah,
in rock
yeah,
theater.
and theaters are mysterious. There's dark corners, there's strange shadows, there's backstage, there's where the orchestra pit, the lighting booth. There's all kinds of little creepy places where you can go and just be quiet. Ed Sullivan Theater was the coolest theater. I mean, it's Elvis performed there, the Beatles. But for me, the coolest place was on the top of the theater, behind where they would just store all kinds of crap. And I sat back there, and I'm not a person that feels spirits, but I was like, this is where I should be. This is where I should be.
Oh, as opposed to like being on. I was about to ask you, like, where's the most energy? Is it directed towards the stage where they were, or like where do you think that?
Well, the energy is wherever you find it, and especially when you're dealing with like spiritual energy. I try and filter that stuff out and not be influenced by my feelings, and just kind of go with what I'm collecting or watching all the other people. When you go on an investigation, John, bring somebody who's never been on a paranormal investigation before, because it's a whole different energy. And maybe they're scared, maybe they're laughing, maybe they're having fun, maybe they think it's all BS. That energy is good. Who knows? If you bring somebody in there and says, you know what, John, this is all bull crap, what's the spirit's going to say? Oh yeah, watch this.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen? Again, like I told you, I used to power lift, and I would go to the gym, and for a long time, I didn't tell anybody that I did this. And around Halloween time, the Daily News or one of the newspapers would want to do something, and they'll do a Google search, come up with me, and suddenly I'm in the paper. And so one Halloween, I'm training, working out, and these big giant guys, 340, 350-pound power lifters go, "Is that you?" I go, "Yeah." And they're like, "Is that real?" I go, "Well, come on, I got keys to the place. Let's go." And we'll go in there, and you hear a door slam upstairs. And they'll go, "Who's upstairs?" I go, "Why don't you go take a look, big boy?" And they're like, "No way, I'm not going up there." But it seems not that it happens on command, but it seems like just spirits, at least at the merchant's house, play along.
Dan, I got a couple more questions for you. You've been a great guest.
Good,
been here
good,
for almost an hour. I really appreciate your time.
Mhm.
Have any of your investigations, and you may have answered this, but like in certain things, have the reactions or the interactions rather with the spirits felt very personal or impactful? Was it like, really, did you feel this was directed to Dan Sturges for your benefit?
Again, like I just said about actors, I was an actor, so of course I think everything's for my benefit. But I'm trying to think. I believe sometimes some of the stuff at the merchant's house, in particular that story I just told you, I thought that was for me. Like, all right, Dad, we're gonna throw you a bone and scare the crap out of this big gigantic guy. Probably the most meaningful interaction I had, and it was with my grandmother.
Okay.
And I had a really big back surgery, and I don't know if any of you guys have had like a major surgery, but the recovery after that a major surgery really messes with your head, and you get low self-esteem. And I couldn't do anything. I had to have people pick up my laundry, and No, and I'm not that guy. I'm used to doing things on my own. So I was feeling really down about myself, and went to sleep one night in my living room, and this was a dream. It was 100% dream. My grandmother came in from the kitchen into the living room. First thing she said was, "Don't be afraid." She told me she's in heaven with Cha-Cha, who was her little chihuahua, and with her husband and her family. And she gave me a pep talk. She said, "Listen, you got to keep doing this. Don't give up." She gave me a pep talk, and it was great. And she said exactly what I needed to hear. It was a dream, 100% dream. But I think she came to me in my dream. And when she left, after she gave me this pep talk, she got up off the chair in my living room, walked past me into the kitchen where it was dark, and that's the entrance to the apartment. But when I woke up, and I did wake up because I was sleeping, I was on one elbow and I was turned and I was looking into the kitchen. So in my sleep, I tracked her, going into the kitchen. So was did she come to me because that's the only way she had available to come to me, was when I was in a dream state? Your mind is running on a different frequency when you're dreaming. And was it easier for grandma to communicate with me through a dream rather than manifesting or doing something that I might not even, register to me? I miss most of the paranormal things that happen around me. I'm like, oh, that was real. Nobody came up the stairs. So that was really meaningful for me. And I was telling my mom about it the next day. It happened, like after midnight. I was telling my mom, "I'm not the craziest dream. Grandma came to visit me, told me all this stuff, and it was grandma's birthday that day."
Wait a second, Dan. Someone's another spirit's being made, we think, and it's just sort of drowning you out.
It's so active around here.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
So
Right.
when
You
I
would
was,
think I was in the city,
I was telling my mom about this, and she said, "When you have this dream?" I said, "Ma, I had it this morning at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night." And she goes, "Dan, today's grandma's birthday. After midnight, it was grandma's birthday."
Wow.
So, did she? I'm going to say, yeah, she came to visit me, and that's how she chose to visit me. Grandma and I were very, very tight, and she was the person I needed to hear from, and she said the things I needed to hear. Did that make that all up in my mind and give it an avatar, which happened to be grandma? Maybe, but what's the difference? What's the difference?
Yeah.
Right. And, with that, I mean, you look at that event, and right, you analyze it, and you sort of, I assume now, because you've been doing this so long, a lot of events now you look at them and analyze them.
Mm-hmm.
What other, what are some of, your personal beliefs how have they evolved as a result of being in this paranormal game for so long?
Sure.
What is what's that look like, for you now, and where do you think it's going for you?
I'm really, really love dealing with psychic mediums like Kathy. And I've got a couple that I work with, like, unfortunately, see, Kathy, when you're dealing with a psychic medium, you could fall into a trap and become like best pals with this person because you're going on investigations with them, and you shouldn't. I am best pals with this medium who I brought to the merchant's house for the very first time. And I didn't believe in psychic mediums. I live in New York City. There's more psychos than psychics out there. And I wasn't buying into it. I met so many freaking weirdos in New York City who were telling me that they're psychic. Dan, I'm psychic. And okay, whatever. You're not. So I was against all of that in the very beginning. And I met two. And one was a gentleman named Richard Scholler, who I'm still very, very close with. And another was like an 8-year-old girl who I was shooting an episode of a TV pilot with Lloyd. And she was on the set, and she was the medium we were using. She was a little girl, and she was pulling stuff out that there's no way she could know. No way she could know. I had to go back and ask my mom, did Dad's parents send him away when he was a little boy? And she was like, yeah, he doesn't talk about it. And this little girl brought it up.
Wow.
Which
was she talking to a spirit, or I've got my dad's DNA in me? Was she getting it from me? I don't know,
So,
but
it's funny you bring that up, because one thing, that we talk about here is my theories on spirits, because I do deviate from the normal ideas. I believe that, when we die, our consciousness, it has no vessel anymore. It spreads.
Right.
So, for example, when someone says to me, "Hey, John, my grandmother came to me in a dream," I turn around and I say, "I don't think they did. I don't think they ever left you.
Hmm.
I think that you got some of that consciousness in you. And for most people that are normal, the
Hmm.
only way they can access you is in dreams. Now,
Right.
other people are sometimes luckier. They'll hear the sound of like their mother, father, grandparents calling them, or
Right.
they'll smell them. Like one person I know was like, it's funny, was like, "Hey, my father always smelled a certain way after work,
Yeah.
gritty,
Like a
and
martini
yeah, yeah, like just like he smelled like menthol cigarettes, cools.
and
he
hookers,
smelled he smelled like cools
Yeah.
and
coconut
gas
body
and
oil.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and motor oil and everything. Like 'cause he worked in a garage and he was always
Right.
smoking cools. And then all of a sudden, like they'll get hit with that smell,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Where does that even come from?" And I
Yeah.
said there could be a scientific explanation to that,
Sure.
or
Sure. Sure.
maybe when your father passed, some of that energy went to you,
Right.
and we kind of see a little bit of this. And I don't know if you've ever like read the studies of people who had organ transplants,
Hmm.
like they get like a heart from somebody, and the next
Sure.
thing you know they start developing the tastes of that person,
Right.
memories of that person, like
Right.
wild stuff like that, weird connections with people they never had.
Hey,
And
I got a crazy one for you. I had a friend of mine.
I love it. I love it. Keep
Yeah.
Let's hear
A
it.
friend of mine had a son from a previous marriage. And the kid was like, I guess at the time, 10, 11, 12 years old. Um, and lived with his mom, but spent a lot of time with his dad. Anyway, his dad, my buddy, started dating a girl who was from Russia. And this kid met her for the first time. He was staying with his dad, woke up the next day and could speak Russian. And this kid was Japanese, and he could speak Russian. And he had a song. He sang it to me. And my buddy did a bunch of research, and it turns out that this song that he was singing, it was like an early version of their like would be Star Spangled Banner, but from like 100 years ago. And he's like, nobody knows this version of this song,
wow.
but this kid was like, I know the song and can still speak Russian. And he's talked to people that speak Russian, and they go, "Yeah, you're speaking like a Russian, and not like somebody who learned Russian, book studied Russian, but you're talking slang, and it's old English, like old Russian slang." So yeah, I think we've got so much in us. I've got, you know, I I've got, my parents, my family, all their DNA is in me. You walk, especially New York City, you're breathing in dead skin cells from somebody else. Who knows if you're going to be able to pick up some of their traits?
Bro, you
You
should start
know?
hanging out on Wall Street then. I would like to get some, like,
Oh,
if I
tell
get
me
an
about
organ,
it.
get like a Lehman Brothers organ or someone in investment banking. Hopefully some of those memories will stick with me. You
Oh,
know what I mean? I wake up one day and just
I don't know if it's
have an
Lehman Brothers you
instinct.
want, but maybe a
Have
little
an
Goldman
instinct,
Sachs.
right. Have an instinct for some stocks and how to
Yeah,
play it a little better. You know what I mean? But it's
that's so funny. That's so
uh
funny.
Dan, look, it's a real pleasure. You're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience, and it's fun to hear your perspective on how you look at it and your approach. And the more it's what's really I find fascinating being new to all this, the more I speak to experienced uh, paranormal investigators or experienced mediums or scientists, they are not like, you know, they're on John's wavelength, in terms of how they look at things.
Mhm.
And it's like there really is a very objective perspective on what spirits are, a belief in them for
Yeah.
sure, but it's not. I haven't come across yet, and I'm sure I will, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. To be honest with you, someone who's been around a long time who finds it very evil. I like those people; they make me laugh a lot. But it's like it's like just
Yeah.
like the demonologists or the curses and the spirit. But
I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and I don't buy into the demonology, and that's not my bag. It's that's religion, and I'm more about trying to figure things out and not having the faith. I want to figure
Dan,
it out.
Dan, I am sorry to cut you off. The more you speak, the more and more I like you. You are awesome, dude.
John, are we going to be life partners, John?
Yeah,
I
you'd
think
be
we
best
might be
I
life
can
friends.
feel it.
partners.
I can feel it, man.
Paranormal life partners, man. It's coming.
We might be best friends. You guys gotta hang. It's like, yeah, because John. Look, John is not. He is not. As you say, he's not an investigator. He likes to go out there and do his thing and have conversations and sort of learn
Yeah.
by doing this.
And
Not.
that's awesome. And you don't have to become a paranormal investigator. I take my friends, if I'm doing an investigation, say down at the house, I go, hey, what are you doing Friday night? What are you doing Saturday night? You want to have a cool night and hold a recorder, and then I'll buy you a beer afterwards. And it's fun, and you don't have to be. I say you don't have to take any of the data log or anything like that. Just come and have fun, because it's an energy, that you're giving out to the spirits. And if you're a spirit, because we've already established these are just people without a body, right? What'd you call it, a meat sack? And that's great.
This is the
very rarely
barroom.
do we get a chance to talk
This is
about
the
my
barroom. It's the barroom
Yeah.
logic of it, right? We're not.
Yeah.
John is raw in terms
Right.
of his every theory and all of his things. Sure, he's read a couple things, but he's basing his. And correct me if I'm wrong, John. You're basing everything you come to through the way you categorize things is because of all of the evidence that you've accumulated.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in saying that, John? I mean, it's like
no, you're not.
his
You're not
theories
wrong
are
at
his
all.
own. He didn't study under Lloyd. I don't even think
Yeah.
John knew who Lloyd was until I introduced, until I told him I was interviewing him.
Right.
So it's like
The only thing I've heard the name before, and the only thing that I knew about him was that he was into chocolate.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
That's it, because I've heard of that. I've heard of him before, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that
Bacon
the chocolate chair?
wasabi chocolate. That's what Lloyd makes. Bacon wasabi chocolate.
Oh, I love wasabi.
Yeah, right.
So Dan, I'm so sorry I cut you off before with your thought. What were you were talking about? What were you saying? I wanted to hear what you were saying.
Oh, we were
I
talking
cut you off.
about
My apologies.
about like the approach when you go on an investigation. And
Yeah, no, with the demonologist, with the
oh,
you were
demonology.
at a
Yeah. Okay.
conference.
Yeah. It's again, like I said, it's not my bag, but I was at this conference in somewhere in Pennsylvania, and I went to go listen to a demonologist, and because it would be a cool lecture to go see, right?
Yeah.
And the lecture he was giving was great, and I didn't want to be the asshole in the back asking, trying, giving him a gotcha question or anything like that. That's
Right.
not cool.
You
I
don't
would
want
hate
to dunk
to
on
do
him.
that. Yeah. And he probably could have just buried me anyway. This guy's been around forever. But he said, okay, you're on. Oh my God, I got another creepy story to tell you. You're on our radar. Okay, he told us there's 300 people in this auditorium. The devil knows you're all here, and he's gonna send his minions to check you out and see if you're a candidate for oppression, because they want to oppress you, possess you, and then they want you to die. They want you to kill yourself, which is the biggest affront you can do to God, is commit suicide, which I don't believe. But
Yeah, I would say that's not it.
Yeah, that's definitely not.
but I was back in my hotel room thinking about these little minions running around checking me out, going, this is kind of creepy. But then I started thinking, why did I wait till I was? How come I had to wait till I was in my 40s to find this out? Like, don't use a Ouija board. Really? Shouldn't they tell you that early on, if it's going to be, demon possessed? Why do they sell it at Kmart? Why do they sell it?
I just bought a spirit board at Target for clearance for $4.99.
Yeah. Use it all you want. Nothing bad's going to happen. Nothing.
Oh, I do it all the time.
I've interviewed the guy.
And I believe they're for ages 8 and up. Let's just be clear.
Exactly.
It says it on the box.
Yeah, you shouldn't be afraid of something you could find at a garage sale.
Yeah.
And but I called the factory where they build them, which is it was in Salem, Massachusetts. and I talked to the guy that I guess runs the plant, and I said, can you just answer me one question? He goes, yeah. I said, what stage of the process do you put the magic in? Because apparently it's magic, you know, it's slate board, plastic, and a brass pin. And that's going to open a portal to hell. Come on. Come on.
That's
I
wonderful.
would tattoo a Ouija board on my back and go to the scariest place ever, and nothing would happen.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Now
I just got a visual. I just got a visual of Dan with the Ouija board on his back,
Right.
and a bunch of people, like, you know,
Like
hovering
with the,
over you.
with the planchette,
that was so-
like finding
It
the.
kinda
I
got
told
me
you that
excited,
story, and
I'm
I
not
gave you what
sure.
I told you, like, all that stuff, and demonology is not my bag. I respect the people that practice that and use that. Not my thing.
Well, to be honest with you, Dan, and I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna be very polarized. I have a big gripe with both religion and
Yeah.
spiritualism when it comes to any sort of investigations. I
Yeah.
think the best way to look at it is through a logical lens,
Yeah.
and leave religion and spiritualism out, at least in the beginning. If you're
Right.
if you're documenting or investigating a place, I believe I've seen those things just
You have to leave them out.
cloud
You have to
people's
leave it out.
minds.
Yeah.
And when, just to be clear, when you say spiritualism, it's not sort of you mean more religious, religious lens, not.
Yes, yeah. Well,
that's-
I'm talking about when I mean spiritualism, I mean the wannabe mediums and psychics, not the credited ones, the ones that the wannabe, the wannabes. And there's tons of them. What was the word that clairvagueness?
Clairvagueness.
Clairvagueness, right?
Yeah.
And also just just as I like to joke around on my live streams, crystals, Jesus, salt and sage. Like that whole
Right.
keep it away
Yeah,
from
I
me.
mean,
Keep
you
it
know,
away.
Deathbed apparitions, right? It's when somebody passes away, and they come and they check on family or loved ones just to make sure that they're okay. And that's why people will say, oh, he died the day before, he came to visit me the next day. Deathbed apparition usually happens within 72 hours, right? So on the third day he rose again. How many hours is the third day? It's 72 hours. So your religion is based on the biggest paranormal event that probably has ever happened. So you can't have your girls break up with me because I'm going to hell.
Zombie Jesus.
Like, listen, we can have fun right now and then take off when I
Yeah.
go to hell. But yeah, people get so wrapped up in that, and those are the
They
people
do.
that are closed-minded.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you this demonology story because it's stuck in my head now.
Please
I told you
do.
that I think
Please
it's
do.
all kind of,
let's close it on a great one. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
all right. So I told you guys want to be actor, and I wanted to write a play, right? What's the scariest movie you guys have ever seen?
I'm going to say probably The Shining.
Shining, Exorcist.
For me,
yeah.
For me, it's a toss up between the classic Blob,
Right.
because that was just awesome when I was a child, and
Sure.
Night of the Creeps, which is the one with those little black, like slug things that turn people into zombies.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but what's the scariest play you've ever seen? Nobody's got an answer. There's no scary play. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a scary play. You write about what you know. I'm like, I know theater. I know this kind of stuff. Let's put them together and write a scary play. And it was turning into like an exorcist type of thing. And I said, let me call a friend of mine who's a demonologist in Texas. And I called him up and I said, listen, man, I don't want it to seem like I'm making fun of this, or if I think it's bullshit or anything like that. How do I approach this, and not in a disrespectful way to you or other demonologists? Because I don't want to shit on anybody. So he was like, no, Dan, it sounds cool, and I'll be there opening night and all this and all that. And he said, but listen, Dan, can I call you like an hour? I was just going to run to the walk-in clinic. I got a really bad headache. He had a stroke and died. Now, he was telling me, Dan, we got to be careful because the demons know that we're having this conversation, and they're going to be really upset with me. Really, really upset with me.
They're critics.
So I have to be careful. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right, thinking, no, you don't. And then he never called me back. And I was like, what the hell, man? And the next day I see a Facebook post from his daughter saying, my dad passed away unexpectedly last night. And I was like, oh my God, I hope that wasn't because of the conversation we were having. Did I just kill my friend? I hope I didn't kill my friend.
That's quite the review your play got before it was even written.
It killed, man. It killed.
It killed. It really, the play killed.
We're going to hell and we're laughing about
Oh my God.
I'll see you guys there.
Dan,
Oh, that's great.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
It was a real,
man, my pleasure, guys. A lot of fun
real
talking
pleasure.
to y'all.
That's it, man. Thank you. I really.
That was
Dan,
wonderful,
definitely
man.
listen, Dan. We're so close to each other. We got to link up.
Absolutely, and I want to get you down to the house too. If you ever want to do one of your live streams or something at the house,
I'd
at a
love
real
to.
fucking house, 100%.
Yeah, awesome.
It'll be fun.
Guys, I'll hook you guys up. I will absolutely put your email together.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure John's my new life partner. So.
Yeah. Hey, awesome.
Dan,
well, the good-looking guys have beards, right?
That's
hey, come on, settle down.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
Be so jealous. Come on.
Yeah, you got hair too, so
not much. That's why do you think I wear this thing to cover the?
Right. Yeah,
headphones.
I'm gonna have to get a big one. Big babushka.
Dan,
All right,
a great evening. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Keep up the great work, man. Keep up the great work, man. And good for you guys. I'm so happy for all your success with this. It's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was great. I mean, it was really fun, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great guest.
You know, I mean, I feel like that's I don't know how old Dan is, but he's probably like maybe, but it's like, you can see your future a little bit in terms of investigating.
Future, right? Well,
he's
he's very. You could tell he has a very logical approach to just everything he speaks about and what he does, and I mean that's I'm very much the same as far as logic goes.
Yeah. I love it. I love his approach. Listen, that was Dan Sturges. This has been Splintered Spirits. Thank you so much for listening and watching.
Yes.
Please, if you like this, follow, subscribe, like everywhere podcasts are. Follow us on all our social media.
And remember, our live podcast every Thursday on YouTube. Yep. Check it out.
Yeah, it's fun. That one's a little loose, a little loosey-goosey, a little more fun. Yeah. Submit your ghost stories. Go to splinteredspirits.com, everybody, please. We would love for you to submit. There's our website, splinteredspirits.com. You will find Dan. You can find Dan at sturgesparanormal.com. I will put that too in my link tree for all our guests. But again, go to splinteredspirits.com. Like, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. John?
Gary?
Always. As always, my friend. Always.
Always.
Nothing like family and ghosts.
That's it.
Buddy.
Later.